Our Christmas surprise program. Real hope that our minds can deal with the task before us. A failure in democracy happening, a government that isn't working properly. Instead of people reasoning together in their House of Representatives, their Congress, their Senate, instead of people reasoning together, the reality is politics prevents people reasoning together. The two-party system, the aisle, the right's on this side, the left on that side, they make deals, but it's against the law, really. It's against the rules. You're in big trouble with the boss of the party guy or over the party boss local that you had a discussion without permission with the other side. So that's among the difficulties of our current situation. But what Santa Claus offers here, or a replacement for Santa Claus, Joe Friendly, kind of a contender as a prophet. Yeah, I think I'm a prophet. I've had a prophet's life. The advantages of being born more or less upper middle class in the upper part. Well, when I punched a Chicago cop in the nose, my father came up with $5,000 cash within a couple hours. So the cops didn't have a chance to work me over in jail. The Chicago police, the Chicago situation, it's not horrible, but it is the same old game. It's like the party game. Once you're on one party in Chicago, then it's the party bosses who rule things and who gets jobs and favors and all that. Forgive me for getting into that morbidity, because what this story is about is Joe Friendly offering the public on a website, peacefulrevolution.us, that is now under consideration. I'm just beginning to put it up. But it'll come down to my offering some thoughts that'll get us started. And the next step is begin constructing a government in waiting. At this stage, we can have discussions, comment threads on the internet at Peaceful Revolution. And the way I break it down is to say, here are some guiding principles to get us started. Since we are not taking power immediately, we can have the advantage of some freedom of imagination so that we can talk ever more calmly, even more creatively about solving the problems before us. So what we're talking about is reconsidering our culture and identifying within our culture commercialism's effect, the games it plays with looks, the messages it teaches our children, the rules, the games, the status thing, your power. That I'm proposing for Christmas, folks, yes, a revolution profoundly deep in which we reconsider human dignity. For real, what it feels like. Marijuana is some help in that process, that marijuana allows you to feel more dignity than usual. That's what high means as opposed to low. And Jefferson smoked marijuana, Washington smoked marijuana. They didn't call it that. What do they call it then? Hemp flowers. Marijuana, the term is just a put-down term that the anti-marijuana people laid on the plant. The alternative to hemp is cannabis. Those are appropriate words, but I'll settle for marijuana, pot, whatever. We got the concept that the marijuana effect, here I, Prophet Joe Friendly, urges be a new part of our civilization in a willfully positive direction. Like, let's try to keep it positive. That marijuana offers hope that we can use our imaginations bigger and better, and the idea is to apply that to making the changes appropriate to converting a corrupt society, a evil government that has turned against its own people, but in particular the military force it has exerted since World War II has been in the service of creating an empire, a rulership of the world. And while they're telling its citizens we're making freedom and democracy happen out there, we have been a cruel force in the political realms around the world. We've done killings, we've done bribery, we've done bombing in country after country. It's a horror story. I'm going to take you now to a banner on my wall. World domination. And anybody gets in our way, what do we do? And since then, so the extreme need for creating a new government is before us. That we have a government that bombs like that all over the place. The wars we got going now, Iraq, we did not deserve to do any of that to Iraq. That was criminal. That was a horror story. Here's what I do know to share on that story, that the story of us, our mess in Iraq, is just a classic example that shows the U.S. government needs to be replaced, that they are so corrupt that they've been able to put off on its citizens a wrongdoing. Saddam Hussein was placed in power by the U.S. government in ways that are shameful. There was a imperial government going on in Iraq once upon a time, and any opposition the ruler would put in jail. And there was a heroic move by some of his officers in his army to seize one tank and run that tank into the wall and shear off a wall of the prison. And the prisoners escaped, and one of those prisoners became the president of Iraq, and the people loved him, and he did wonderful things. And the U.S. hired Saddam Hussein to kill him. So Santa Claus has those kind of truths, unfortunately. What we're talking about is, as a people, facing how evil our government has been around the world, that the so-called war on terrorism is a governmental attitude with respect to its citizens. That is the con man thing. That the reason there might be some terrorism is because we create enemies when we do horrible things, bombing out there, so it's only fair, wouldn't you say, for them to come back and try to get even with us. We bomb them, they're going to at least throw a little bomb in our direction to maybe wake up the American people to appreciating something wrong is going on. But our government says, oh, no, a war on terrorism, that means everybody has to surrender more liberties. Yes, line up, folks, and surrender your liberties and allow us to complete our grip on you, the citizen, by looking at all your mail so we can prevent political opposition and stuff like that. So people do warn me, hey, Joe, you're going to get killed if you're opposing the establishment. But I'm going to give the establishment credit. I assume they've been listening in on my life for a while on the phone and stuff. And what I propose is a graceful resolution of the situation. That I was saying we should consider what human dignity is all about and what money is all about. To really take a good look at money and ask ourselves as a people, what should money be like in a society built on full human dignity? One idea I had proposed in the 90s in coming up with plans for a peaceful revolution was the idea that we give every citizen, every adult, $1,000 a month for a whole year, every once in a while, as I put it, so that we could better feel what freedom is. Freedom is having enough money. That's freedom. And it's ironic, our language and all that, when it's free, people jump up and down and stuff like that, but we don't face as a people to have a bunch of money in your pocket and freedom have a lot in common. And so I'm proposing as a simple solution, 1,000 a month. Is that right? No, 1,000 a week. Yeah, that does sound a little more generous, don't it, folks? 1,000 a week, so people could just really feel free, like a upper middle class person is, to decide what do they want to buy, to do, to go. That's part of my proposals for peaceful revolution, but I'll go further. I'm saying as a people, we should begin imagining our full ownership of the corporations, that we just make the simple rule that public corporations have to be in the service of, for, and by the people. They have to be in favor of the people. The corporation's orientation shouldn't be to take as much from the people as possible and give it to the shareholders. We're going to have the people be the shareholders, and therefore you don't have to take it as profit. Just be good in the first place. The people as owners don't require profit. Woohoo! Yeah, that does change the game. And also to look at the whole marketing game, the world of advertising, and as a people, how do we peacefully change that? Well, just take a good look at it. The idea is to face as a people how to correct this situation. I'm saying the cancer upon us is commercialism. And that instead of commercialism, which is a hustle, it is something less than the way of the clear conscience. And that's what I'm proposing we aim at as a people. An economic system, a social system, a culture, a government, with the idea that people are walking around feeling good, feeling healthy, feeling strong, feeling that they do understand what's going on, and that they're satisfied with it, that people are using our productive capacities now at last to make things that are worth making in ways that serve the planet, a renaissance in design of goods along sustainable lines, a seizing of the economy in the name of some kind of martial law mentality. But the idea is, hello, the climate risk is upon us, and that would create the logic once we get rolling, hurry up, put that new government in power, because the fate of the planet requires the changeover from the fucked up way things are going, the usual game, to the Joe-friendly alternative reality in which the government in waiting puts into place the propositions that have been discussed locally, internationally, and just plain old nationally. On the internet, we talk through what goods should we make, where do we want to make them, what factories are appropriate, without worrying about current ownership. The idea is to imagine a people's lawyer saying, folks, don't worry about it. You can have any kind of ownership you want. When it comes to the law, I offer you this surprise. I did study law after I studied engineering, and I looked at the law as an inadequate, a crude approximation of people reasoning together, but it was mostly word games. And the American legal system is really the takeoff on the English common law, they call it. And that game should be understood. It was created in England to serve the king. And therefore the king didn't want to give the judge too much power, so the judge could only make rulings new if there had not been any rulings in the past. But you're supposed to follow the old rulings, except if your case had something new about it. So that's the game of the American common law. What's new? And a lot of categorizing. And what I'm proposing is that we can quit that game and just talk about what's fair. Not what the law is, but what's fair. And our modern systems of communication can let the public interact, but the kicker is that we look for good judges and give them the power to make justice according to their own clear minds, consciences, hearts, brains, and their friends for that matter, but a freedom to search the conscience for the outcome rather than the books. Although I wouldn't rule out the books too, sure. I mean, the internet isn't to be wasted. I mean, the idea of going to the library and looking something up in the old days, and with Google, you can search 1 million libraries in less than a minute. Let's not waste that. Let's use that as a representative democracy switches over to a direct democracy. That's the peaceful revolution idea, how to make a direct democracy happen instead of the games they play in Washington. But we can have discussion leaders, we can have leaders. The idea is people request the attention to their talking, and they say something important, and people acknowledge the importance, act on it. One of the problems is, as a people, we haven't learned how to think together, how to discuss things. We've had very little practice of that, and I was already complaining, our Republican Democratic Party thing, that game sort of forbids people talking to each other, man to man, woman to woman, human to human. So I'm pointing to it so we can correct it, but it hasn't been corrected yet. And what we're talking about more broadly is votes for sale, the corruption of our government, and its replacement being a bold revolution, a total revolution, a peaceful revolution, but a full revolution insofar as making things the way they ought to be. So that's the idea, is to invite that discussion. How do you believe things ought to be in the name of fairness and whatever else your criteria are? I'm open to that. That's the idea, is to make things the way they ought to be. And we don't have that much pressure on us. We are only a government in waiting. They still got the going game going. But the going game is working pretty good. As much as I criticize it, using 25% of the world's resources is pretty well used in the form of, there's a lot of waste. But in terms of what gets done, things are working pretty good. The corruption hasn't shown up. So, let's identify some of the new revolutionary principles. We're talking about a legal system that replaces the common law idea with judges empowered to go about making justice with a free hand and a full heart, with the transparency monitored by the public, and systems for complaining if people feel fairness didn't happen right. So that's the revolution there. Santa Claus, or what's your name, Joe Friendly, you're saying you're going to offer a vision of an alternative. And the alternative will be 1,000 a week for everybody, how often? Oh, let's say every 4th year. We want people to just feel free to travel around the world, to listen to other people when they tell them what's been going on. And America begins to wake up. We face the sins our country has committed around the world with those stories told on TV. We rescue mainstream media so it is actually a servant of the people rather than a manipulator of the people. We promote getting beyond the looks and appreciating the inner qualities of people, that so much of American television ultimately is a looks game. Let's face it as a people and improve on it in our educational system. What I offer in the name of a prophet, a scientist, and even Albert Einstein and Freud and Galileo and Mendeleev, the periodic table creator. I propose a solar compass for the human domain is obtained by properly appreciating the power of the sun in the development of the infant, how our brains and the rest of our nervous system, our nervous system, our neural networking, our modalities, our ways of being human are determined in large measure by birthday, to such an extent that paying attention to birthday will enable us to much better talk among each other usefully, and to guide us in democracy happening as far as people talking together, discussing things, deciding together what to do. Attention to birthday offers some new hope that that process can overcome difficulties that I've certainly seen when a lot of people try to think out loud together. It doesn't work as well as one boss thinking up what to do. That's the reality. That's the tension between the right and the left. That it is a reality that committees, group think, don't come up with good answers, as ultimately shown by time and testing and all that. Whoops, that was a bad decision, that was a good one. That individuals are capable of making good guesses, good choices, and that has to be pointed out as one of the features of the Joe Friendly Revolution, is to cherish people caring for each other and to cherish the individual as capable of decision making as an individual. So I have devoted 40 some years of my life, about 45, 46, studying birthday. The way I studied it was I first figured it out real good, wrote it up in a scientific paper of about 180 pages, took it around a little here and there, and then I decided to become a member of the Manhattan Society by looking in the Village Voice want ads. What job should I get? Being still upper middle class with money coming from Chicago when I needed it, but they're saying, hey Joe, learn how to... At that point my name wasn't Joe either. At that point my name was Arthur Rubin. And I saw an ad in the Voice that said, wanted, strong, highly intelligent, good-hearted men to work as household movers. No experience required. Driver's license a plus. That was the ad. And I waited a week for the ad so that the early applicants would already have burned out. And I called them up and I had an appointment, and the owner had a degree in physics from Europe, but it wasn't enough respected. He had to go buy a moving company to try to survive. And at that point, I think he had one big truck and a small truck and a crew and a storefront. And I was the new guy and watched how the game is played. And eventually I had my own company and I advertised good people movers. You can help and save. And I encouraged people to come help me do the job. I'd be more like a teacher. And the connection there is with the solar compass birthday idea. This was my way of studying birthday. I ran around town in a truck for 30 years in Manhattan with my customers, asking them about their lives, their birthdays, their relatives, their friends, their birthdays. Here I go, just talking out loud. Maybe this is a good piece of the game accomplished. I'm saying we should have this peaceful revolution discussion, and I will have this website where we can interact with suggestions for what an alternative should look like, could look like. The alternative to our current government is to use our technical capability wisely with a free hand as a people. We decide what we want to do with our economy and we do it. And we forget about the going games with money that are happening with the banks and all that crap. We just ignore it. That we have a jubilee where we just say no more debt for anybody. It's all over. The debt game, sorry, new game. But we make the new one worth it. That what we're talking about is either things are happening right or there's somebody for you to complain and make it right. But the idea is to build things the way they ought to be. Let's have that discussion. Factories, neighborhoods, how things ought to be. And what I imagine happening is that we'll come up with what changes are required, and a lot of companies can more or less continue in many ways the way they're functioning, but the changes will be apparent. There will be a different feeling in people as they go about their day, that they'll see it feels better to be caring about each other, honest with each other, to serve the public as the game rather than the management and the shareholders. What I'm proposing is that in the new America, that the requirement of full human dignity, those years when you don't get your $1,000 a week and you got to work for somebody else for your money, that we want leadership on the basis of freely given consent, or pretty close to it. We want somebody that even if you didn't need the money, you'd work for them. That's the idea, or them, or the committee, or whatever. We'll have individuals, and I guess rewards for them as fair. I just learned a couple days ago that the number one polluter, insofar as polluting with CO2, the number one contributor to the climate change CO2 emission, the number one bad force on the planet is the U.S. military. They consume carbon fuel in such a wasteful degree, and I already showed you what the military has been doing shouldn't be done. So, hello, we are talking about demilitarizing the world, and as the world leader, the dominator, what do you call it? Yeah, the ruler of the world, we can hopefully disband that game, and I think the public would give a cheer that you only have a military when there's a war, and if there's no war, no military. That's the original idea. And then the U.S. started cheating on that. But it is a joke calling it a Department of Defense. It's really been a Department of Offense. So picking up, hey Joe, what's your revolutionary thing here? So we're talking about a renaissance in product design where things are not going to be designed not for business games where they break and you got to buy another one, or, you know, the different games. Looks being a misleading item in the product design. That we start a different mentality prevailing. That's the hope. These teeth, these lips, these hairs around those lips, this guy, Joe Friendly, his words about a peaceful transition, instead of everything blowing up with bombs and stuff, that the people of America actually peacefully choose a utopian, popular experiment in people reasoning together out loud, promoting in their children, in their adults, a deep empathy, a caring for each other, so that there is a real sense of solidarity and a respect for individuality. That's the Joe Friendly contribution to this government in waiting, this new social order. And I'll say one more time that I kid around and talk about a solar compass. And I also, no, that's not the kidding around. The kidding around part is I say a solar generator of political power. And they go, wow, hey Joe, what are you talking? And I say it was invented by Confucius, who says when a society outgrows its social forms, it can achieve a efficient transition to appropriate social forms through the agency of one extraordinary individual, first managing to gather the people by demonstrating the value of accurately measuring the seasons, and with their attention thus obtained, talk them through the social changes they need to put in place instead of the current corrupt or inappropriate ones. So that's me, guys, and the idea of gathering the people. Remember that part of this Confucius thing? And one extraordinary individual may gather the people by, and gathering the people is political power. And what I've discovered about birthday is that people should enjoy the reality that people of birthdays 6 months apart tend to appreciate the way each other's minds work more than usual. It's sort of in a striking way. It's a pleasing thing. And for example, the current big deal that there was a decision, no more solitary confinement in New York prisons. Here comes Joe Friendly saying, how about this? Now that you're going to do something else than solitary, how about cells in pairs where the people have birthdays 6 months apart? I'm predicting they will ordinarily, or if one particular 6 month doesn't work, then those people get to pick other people who are all within that category. That's probably a better way to put it. that once you know what to look for within the group 6 months from your birthday, some will definitely fit it and some won't. So, okay, there will be some that won't, but the ones that do, you'll see that there is a clicking, a harmony among people of birthdays 6 months apart. Our matchmaking places, as far as I know, haven't been operating with that. Conventional astrology acknowledges, oh yes, complementary signs, but they complicate matters with the planets and the rising sign and the moon sign, and I'm saying don't go there. That my mission is to rescue birthday from astrology by pointing out it's all about just the sun and timing, and humans having evolved to respond to the timing of the seasons. The mathematics turns out to be elegant, that the envelope of solar energy variation turns out to be what in mathematics is called a sign cycle, and therefore the sign cycle of energy variation throughout the year is something of the order of a low-end 200 calories per square centimeter per day in winter solstice about now, and 6 months later the summer solstice, June 20 whatever, 4 or even more of that, so that would be 800 calories per square centimeter. So we're talking about a range from 200 low, 800 high, a factor of 4. And that's the seasons. That's how much hotter the summer is than the winter. As the baby learns what life is all about, babies born when it's nice and it gets better are different kinds of minds than babies born when they have to deal with the cruel in nature, particularly before central heating and lighting came into the picture. We do have to make some adjustments for that reality. We have a 4-to-1 sign cycle, and sign cycles are a very special form of mathematics. They are really a beautiful marriage of the line and the circle. And I did study these quite deeply in college. As an electrical engineer, I learned the trick of the Laplace transform, in which all the information is preserved as you take a whole bunch of calculus differential equations and magically turn them into just a bunch of sine cycles, and that combs through the data and preserves all of it, but reduces it from calculus down to easy algebra. And the sine cycle does that with its 3 dimensions, frequency, amplitude, and phase. And there, as a student, I learned the importance of phase as one of the big 3. Frequency, amplitude, and phase is what the world of the Laplace transform, the sine cycles, change calculus to algebra, and don't waste information. Phase is one of the big 3. It's a dimensional thing with respect to the single most important thing in all of life. Yep, the sun. Birthday is phase of the sine cycle of solar energy here in the temperate zone. What about the other temperate zone? What about the southern temperate zone? I hear that a lot. That's an obvious complaint, and people certainly look for everything they can to resist the pains of change from one way of thinking astrology is a bunch of junk to there's really something to birthday? You mean that the people really do start that way? Yep, that's the way it is, pal. Yep, birthday does sort humanity in useful ways that are not to be wasted by contempt and neglect and disbelief and lazy thinking and stuff like that. So, birth date is phase on the solar energy sign cycle. This recording I made after watching the video and saying, whoops, I got distracted and didn't talk about the solar compass is appreciating birthday's dimensionality because it is a dimension, phase of the solar sign cycle, and human beings have systematically evolved to respond with different ways of being human. That's how we've got 2 names, 2 words, human being, because there's different ways of being human. They didn't want to nail us with just one thing, one word, but then again, a lot of times we do that. We make generalizations that are not appropriate to all of humanity, but maybe only a 12th and stuff like that. And incidentally, I am not into numbers for the fun of it. I would say that we can pay too much attention to exact number, and what I'm talking about has variation about it. It's not the magic of the number. We're talking quantities of solar energy, and within the neighborhood is within a neighborhood, and that might be perfectly adequate for applying this knowledge. You don't have to nail the exact number, but 10 plus or minus 2 or 3 is the way I generally operate in making approximations and what to try. It doesn't have to be right on the number. And obviously there is at least 3/4 of a year play in our way of keeping track of things nowadays, the leap year thing. So the discovery claimed is that birthday, by amounting to phase on the solar energy annual sign cycle, is a major player in the different ways of being human. We can begin to explore that, particularly with solar imaging. They're already looking at the different ways brains look in their functional moments on screens, and I think we'll find out that birthday helps sort those images even better than now. That I think that it'll show up apparently in the visual looking of brain diagrams. So let's go back to the show. So the face don't go with the words that good, maybe. We're talking a revolution accomplished successfully by an extensive public discussion in America, on the internet, in localities. Hey, how about we make things the way they ought to be? What are we going to have about private property? Yeah, what about private property? Let's talk about it. In terms of who owns what, we're having everybody's mortgages paid off, so that for starters, a cancellation of all debt, that should be a positive pull in the direction of, hey, yeah, let's have the revolution. All the debt gets wiped off. Hey, I like it, Joe. All right. And what else? The idea is to begin talk in that direction. I guess I'll pick people to begin our government in waiting. I think of Amy Goodman. I think of Tom Hartman. I think of Brian Lair and Leonard Lopate. I think of Michio Kaku. I think of Richard Wolff, Barbara Ehrenreich, Cynthia McKinney, Medea Benjamin and her people. And I am feeling for the ones who are annoyed I left out their names, in particular a female here and there. I like Sushara Taylor. And I'm fascinated with Aaron Aid. But there I go, enjoying fancy. This here be Joe Friendly, doing a kind of a crude rap about the possibilities of the public taking power away from a criminal government, a criminal enterprise, and switching that power over to some kind of thing where if you want to know what you got to do, you get in touch with different people and they can arrange, if you want to work, what you can do at the working thing. There'll be new games to play to replace the marketplace, to replace commercialism. That's the idea. Let's replace commercialism with reason and morality. When it comes to morality, if there's not the strain by there being scarcity, then we can work it through. We might be able to continue a lot of what's going on now, but with a acknowledgement, a nod, a wink, whatever, that the new ways are happening, that now we're going to be, instead of playing business games, we're going to be fully truthful with each other. That's the revolution as a dimension easy enough to talk about. We're talking about justice and fairness happening, judges, officials devoted to that. If something ain't right in the new social order, there'll be people available to hear complaints and act on them. That's the new plan. And I was thinking some people who want to work could be one class of people, and the people who don't want to work, another class. And that would be sort of a joke. That would be a new working class. But if you didn't want to work, you'd get your whatever the amount of money, say $1,000 a month. And the people who work, they get $1,000 a week. And on up, I guess. And the idea before us is we have, as a people, we think out loud what needs to be done, who wants to help do it. And that's the working class, the people who come forward and say, I want to do what's needed, what needs to be done. And we'll have people to do the arranging in those terms. That's the new order. As far as how to make that happen, let's talk about it. So, how long has this been so far? 45 minutes. Whoa. I usually aim for 58, don't you know? So I was saying 6 months apart, cellmates would be one application. I think we should have high schools or just announce public meeting places, bars, restaurants, plazas, where people 6 months apart can meet each other. And we can meet each other one at a time, or we can circle around and look at us in groups. We can make TV programs where we finally, as a people, face what the birthday characteristics are, and we can do a lot better than the language of astrology. That what we're talking about, we can name the months, April, May, and stuff. We can say Aries and Taurus a little bit. That's April and May, sort of. The sheep, and then the cows and the bulls. And the goats are up by January, and the horses are, that mentality, we can do a lot better than that. That I'm talking about rescuing birthday from astrology. I have written in the 70s and 80s a pretty good beginning to that. So what I have to do is put that up online, publish the way I have the traits figured out, so that we can, in fact, rescue birthday from astrology and see that we're just talking about the power of hot and cold, light and dark, the seasons, the sounds of the birds and the insects, and the feeling of pleasant breezes and chilly winds, and human nature having evolved to have a circular variety of different ways of being human. The realms of cruelty and openness and kindness and... Whoop, did I say that? Let's explore, I will say this, that the modern indoor heating and electric lighting do mitigate, apparently, hopefully, a lot of the problematic morbidity that was in the October, November, December part of the birthday spectrum. In the Bible, that part is cursed. In the song of Jacob on his deathbed singing to his 12 sons, that's the biblical authors offering their lesson in the birthday factor. When Jacob on his deathbed sings about Simeon and Levi, That's October, November, December. He said, you guys have such cruelty in your hearts that I declare my spirit separate and apart from your cruelty. And on, that you've made me stink among other peoples for the wrongdoing you did. We had a promise that we made that if they circumcise themselves, we would intermarry, and they circumcised themselves, and you went and killed a bunch of them instead of accepting our promise. So there is a condemnation of the ways of the conscience, keeping promises, right there in Genesis 49. That's Jacob's deathbed song to the 12 sons. And the ordering of the 12, I've decided, it's up for discussion, but the firstborn is Reuben, and I believe he is the beginning of the fall, September 20, whatever. So that would be Reuben, born then. And what Jacob says in his song about him is, yours is the excellency of dignity, but unstable as water you shall not excel. So he's saying that there is a limitation for these people, that they do need the support of people born 6 months from their birthday to add that positive stuff, because they're best as listeners and helpers rather than thinking up the big ideas that are other parts of the circle. So he says, you have the look of excellence, but you don't really have excellence as far as your imaginings. And they make good listeners. They watch television, I find, and love television and learn from it. So if we were to rescue our culture and rescue television so that it would be truly oriented, dreamed up in the service of promoting people caring for each other, appreciating each other in a full way rather than relying on looks, and that we have a new kind of class system in which we're all trying to help each other feel full in the class system, at the top of the heap in some ways or other. I do have trouble putting that in words right now, but I hope as a people we will, especially smoking marijuana together, we will understand that there is this highway to be, that we should encourage each other, and that is the way of not getting disease. Not being put down is the opposite. When you're put down. Oh, another thing to talk about while I've got some time left is prisons. That I condemn our whole prison trip as needless cruelty. That where there is some need for confining people because they're violent, okay, there can be some kind of boundaries of some form. But in terms of the suffering that is involved in being imprisoned, the logic of it is, he broke the law. Hey, come on, you break the law, you gotta feel the pain. But it doesn't, apparently, by scientific testing, it doesn't discourage people to do these wrong things. That fear of getting caught is a major player, but not the sentencing. So the sentencing has degenerated into supporting prison communities and the people in the neighborhood who depend on prison money to buy their meals and pay their rent. That's wrong and sick, and no more. That the idea of prisons is just obsolete. It's just needless cruelty. It's a form of slavery, of a cruel kind of slavery even. After the revolution, what the prison rooms will be like. People living in them. We do need, as a people, to face what we can do to make up to the world for what we have done. One general proposition is the goods that we provide to the world, we should be generous about it. I mean, we can provide dental services and teach people how to be dentists. Other countries are already doing that. Some of that's happening here. As well as doctors and you name it. We should replace our military domination of the world, that realm of world leadership, rulership, to supplying toilets of different kinds. That's a need in the world. Facing that as wisely as we can. Solar power, wind power, and taking care of the aged. That is another thing that can make for employment. I was just hearing how the majority of the population in China is going to be people in their 60s. What that can mean. Partly as the result of the one-child-only policy that China insisted upon, their government insisted upon their public. So I'll summarize. I have tried to say out loud that it is more or less possible to describe a alternative to our current situation, which is a criminal enterprise, dysfunctional government, nasty ruler of the world, a war on terror that is hiding the reality that we caused the terrorism coming back at us because of the nasty stuff we do out at the world, the killing that we do. So their relatives come back and try to get even. And we have been a cruel ruler of the world. Let's face that as a people. Let's deal with it wisely, creatively, lovingly, all that good stuff. I was saying that birthday is important because there is a sine wave that goes from 200 calories per square centimeter to 800. And birthday turns out to be a dimension of that sine wave called the phase. The identity of every individual point on the curve as a starting point, and that's what birthday is about, the individual starting point on that solar curve. Birthday amounts to phase on the solar sign cycle, and therefore Joe Friendly said, wake up America, wake up the world. Let's find out how much useful, 6 months apart you're going to enjoy each other, and let's start making that happen. Birthdays 6 months apart is the harmony. 3 months apart is trouble. And now we go the next step. Let's actually apply all this and solve the problem. Not by blowing it all up, but by thinking our way gracefully to a solution.